Welcome to this total body endurance workout for your luteal phase. This is the time of the cycle where we are shifting into preservation mode, where we are changing our approach to things like strength training and conditioning to really leverage that physiology that happens in the luteal phase. So we have slightly elevated metabolism, we have a preference for fat burning for fuel, and we have a harder time accessing carbohydrates. Coupled with that, we have a catabolic metabolism where our body is more prone to being in breakdown mode to supply nutrients to the endometrium. With all of that in place, we want to avoid hitting our high intensity thresholds. So for an endurance workout, what we're looking for is a lower intensity effort, which means lighter weights and higher reps. In today's practice, that's exactly what we're doing. So we are using a light set of weights. I've got a 10-pound set of dumbbells, which is about half to 2/3 of what I might use in this workout in other phases of the cycle. We are using interval training for today simply to keep the container of the workout, so to keep us to time and to give us that nice structure. You can also use a rep scheme instead if you want to do 16 reps of each exercise instead of using the intervals. But for the guided practice, we'll be walking through interval training. We have a quick warm-up to start, 5 minutes at the front of the workout, and then we have a quick cool down to finish. I'll be walking you through the entire time, keeping time for you. So just make sure that you have your weights ready, you have space to move, and we will get started. I'll begin our timer here, and in about 20 seconds, we'll start with our total body warm-up. This is just something to get your blood flowing, maybe get your heart rate up just a little bit, and to generate some heat. So you'll stand at the center of your space with your feet turned slightly out, heels turned slightly in, and we're working with a squat and rotation. So we'll begin in 3, 2, and 1. We squat it down, take the arms long, and rotate. So we're warming the spine, warming the legs, all the major joints in the lower body here. Squatting as deeply as feels comfortable, maybe deepening as we go through this warming interval. We're here for about 15 more seconds. Start to connect to your deep diaphragmatic breathing, so in through the nose and out through the nose where possible. Your breath is a great guide for the intensity. And come to the back of your mat. We're working through a walkout push-up. So we slowly come into a forward bend with a deep bend in the knees, walk out. You can take the knees down and push up. Take the elbows wide, come back. Walk back to your standing position and all the way up. So the breath is your guide for intensity here. We want to make sure that you can keep that steady state endurance effort. Come up. We're switching now to our downward dog with a cow spine. So come into downward dog and then slowly lower the knees, soften the belly, gaze up as you inhale, exhale back to downward dog. So the breath should stay consistent. If you start to notice that you're approaching that breathless zone where you have to breathe through your mouth and your breathing is labored, then dial it back a little bit, maybe pause the video, take extra rest, and modify accordingly. From here, we're going to step back to the center of the mat. Take your feet nice and wide into a goddess squat. Turn the toes out, heels in, sink nice and deep. And then we'll alternate between this deep squat and then toes in, heels out, fold. So between those two, you can keep your hands on the mat for support here and fold. Just warming the backs of the legs, the inner thighs here. Last one. And then slowly roll up to standing. Step your feet back in together, alternating hip circles here. So we just take that one leg nice and wide and then alternate sides. So warming the hips, looking for any sticky points that we can work through before we get started. We'll be here about 10 more seconds. And then we'll start to work into our hip hinge movement. So we've got about 3, 2, and 1 coming into a hip hinge. So bend at your hip creases, reach the arms forward, and then draw the elbows back behind you. Reach them forward and come back to stand. So it's the hip hinge. The weight is forward in the feet, but you're still anchoring through the heels. so that you can keep your hips aligned with the ankles. Reach and back up here for about 5 more seconds. And up. Come back to center, squat with the side bend here. So again, we squat deep. This time, reach. One hand to the opposite side. Squat and reach. So breathing into the sides of the waist here. We're working into the obliques, creating space in the spine. And again, always connecting to your in and out breath, making sure that you have that conscious breathing, deepening and expanding the lungs to make your movements more efficient. And now we're switching to a reverse lunge with the lat pull. So the arms start overhead. We'll step it back and take the elbows down. Reach it up and pull. Reach. Imagine you're resisting or pulling down on a cable. You can even kind of create that clasp for the mind-muscle connection. So you can visualize pulling that load down to activate the lats. Last 3, 2, and 1. Coming into a forward lunge now with a twist. So as you step down, hands to the inside of the foot, reach it up, come back, and together. Forward lunge. Twist it open, back, and together. Step it forward, twist, back, and together. So using some power in the legs here to find that rotation, back, and together. We have one more movement in our warm-up. Coming up to stand, we'll be in a lateral lunge, so side to side with a chest fly. So open and close, open and close. Reach it out, squeeze the shoulder blades, and then hug the chest together. Feel that activation. So we have a quick transition between our warm-up and the workout. Get ready to move your body into position, into a plank position for renegade rows. That's our first movement pattern. So we've got about 40 seconds to transition here. Catch your breath, grab your lighter set of weights, and start to move down into position. So for your renegade rows, you can be in tabletop. The key is to take the elbow back to the hip, not lifting up or tipping the shoulder forward, straight back to the hip. You can also be in a bear crawl plank, or you can be in your full plank renegade row. We're alternating sides. And again, we're keeping the shoulders nice and relaxed, broadening apart, taking the elbows straight back to the hips. We'll get going here in 3, 2, and 1. Take that elbow back and down. Back and down. So we have 35-second working intervals, nothing too long, but we're aiming for somewhere between 12 and 16 reps. That's our endurance zone where we have lighter weight, something that feels lower intensity, not high exertion, but we're still working. We're preserving that hard-earned muscle that we laid down in the first half of the cycle. Last 3, 2, and 1. Get ready for a kneeling hip thrust. So we come into the kneeling position, press the backs of your feet onto the mat. The weights are going to be resting on that front part of your shoulder, so the anterior deltoid. We're going to go in about 10 seconds. We're simply lowering the hips down and driving the hips up. So it's that hip extension where we drive the power. Let's go in 2, 1. Here we go. Down and drive it up. Down and drive it up. So here you can move a little bit more quickly, but without, again, topping that moderate intensity working zone. So we're trying to stay in the range of about 70% of your maximum heart rate. So it's something that you can maintain for a long period of time. You can be conversational, so you're not breathless. And again, we're aiming for somewhere between 14 and 16 reps. That should dictate your pace. 35 seconds. It's not a long interval rest, but it's enough time with the lighter weight that you should be able to hit that endurance rep range. So our next movement pattern is simply a front press with a curl. So I'll demonstrate here. Really brace through the belly, lift hip points and low ribs toward each other. Stretch up through the heart. We press it out, curl, back and to the chest. Let's begin. Here we go. Press it out, curl it up, back to the chest. It's a front press. curl to 90, down and back. So we're driving that weight out, squeezing the heads of the dumbbell and back. From the chest, drive it out, curl, squeeze the biceps, and come back to center. So here, as you press the ends of the dumbbell, you're engaging the outer arms and the chest. And then we find the biceps in that curl. 3, 2, 1. We're coming back to the top. So we have 3 rounds of this little mini circuit, this tri-set. So we're back at the top with our renegade rows. Again, you have the option to be in tabletop with the knees down, just focusing on the row. You have the option to be in a bear crawl plank, where the knees are hovering, or you can be in full plank for a full renegade row. We'll go in 3, 2, 1. Keep your plank steady. So again, hugging the hip points up to the low ribs. Broaden across the shoulders and draw each elbow straight back towards the hip. So you're engaging the back, you're engaging the core to stabilize here. And breathe. So again, you should find that in-out breath through the nose, nice and easy, nice and steady. And this will build in volume, it will build in challenge, but it should be something sustainable that doesn't burn you out or deplete your resources. And rest, which is so critical in the luteal phase. So oftentimes, we sort of drop back in the luteal phase if we push too hard. And then it's like starting from scratch at the start of a new cycle. So really allow yourself the freedom to work in this zone, to enjoy this steady state, lower intensity effort. Shoulders, weights are at the shoulders, hip thrust. Here we go. Lift it up. Drive the hips into that extension. Squeeze the glutes at the top. Spine stays straight and strong. So think of it like a hip hinge. Crown to tail moving as a unit together. Breathe. So you should have that nice and easy breath. Should be able to breathe in and out through the nose, or maybe exhales through the mouth as needed. Again, the luteal phase is an opportunity to invest in your next cycle. So rather than pushing through, rest. Rather than kind of overriding or driving high intensity efforts, you can be in control. You can shift the intensity so that you're driving the energetic curve. You're driving the energetic arc. We're going in about 10 seconds with our front press to curl. So rather than your body slamming on the brakes when your period arrives, you get to dictate when that change happens. Here we go. Press it out, curl it up, back out, and together. So keep the arms parallel the whole time. Try not to let the elbows wing out. We're pressing forward, up, back, and in. Here we go. Press it out. Curl it up, squeeze the biceps, out, and back. Squeeze the end of that dumbbell to engage the outer arms, the outer shoulders, and the whole time you're lifting those hip points and low ribs together toward each other to brace the low belly and rest. Coming into our last round of these 3 exercises. Again, you can always modify or step it up. That's part of intuitive practice, is really listening to what your body needs and changing throughout. So the programming doesn't dictate how you practice. Your body and your energy dictate how you practice. 3, 2, 1. Coming into your renegade rows now. Elbow to hip. Keep the shoulders and the hips square. So your shoulders might want to pop open to make the movement happen, but engage the belly to keep that position in the body and to activate the core. Here we go. Elbow to hip, back and down. Press through the heels to activate the legs. So you're engaging the quads to stabilize the lower body. Last 3, 2, and 1. Coming out, getting ready for the kneeling hip thrust. So you have 25 seconds of a break. So we're changing the proportion of the intervals for the luteal phase, where we have very close to equal working intervals and resting intervals. That is by design. We need more rest. We need more recovery in the luteal phase. 3, 2, 1. Drive it up and back down. We have a slight change in our plasma volume, which means blood is slightly thicker. There's less fluid in the blood, so it's harder for the heart to pump that thicker blood to your muscles during workouts. So not only does it feel challenging, but it's harder work for your body, which is already burning more calories at its baseline in the luteal phase. So lots of reasons to shift the intensity, to make that conscious choice during the luteal phase and rest. And the reason we do that is so that we can come back stronger in the next cycle. So it's not like taking 2 weeks off from working out. There's still lots of work to be done. It's just a conscious shift in the way we approach it. So come back to your kneeling position. We'll go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with the front press. Press it out, curl it up, take it back and in. Here we go. Squeeze that dumbbell up, back, and in. When I started changing my workouts in the luteal phase, it was hard. I'm a type A personality. I'm someone who spent a lot of years relying on the perfect workout week to define my self-worth, to help myself feel better. And the kicker is, it never really worked. But then when I started changing the luteal phase approach, it was like I had more in the tank. I felt rest, like I was more integrated and really moving more in tune with my physiology. So I wasn't having to fight. It was more flow and less force. So after this interval, we have a quick transition, and then we're coming to our second little mini circuit. So it's another 3 exercises that we'll work through. We've got about 40 seconds to transition. So the next movement patterns are going to be a dumbbell deadlift, a front squat, and a strict press. The deadlift, you have your weights by your sides, and we're simply hinging at the hips, tapping those weights to the outsides of the feet, and then driving the hip hinge. So driving that hip extension as we come up to stand. Front squat, weights are on the anterior part of the shoulder. We're simply squatting down and up. And then your strict press, it can be either narrow or wide, just overhead and back down. We'll go for a dumbbell deadlift in 2, 1. Here we go. Take it down, hip hinge, and lift up. So for me, the first few reps of a dumbbell deadlift, I always have to transition from the squat to the hip hinge. So my body naturally wants to move into a squat position, but instead it's a hip hinge. So you can bend the knees, but you're driving through the heels with the hip extension rather than through the heels in a squat. So it is a slightly different muscle activation. We're targeting the posterior chain. Rest. Take your weights to your shoulders. Now we're in the front squat. So I really want you to feel the difference in the body position, in the movement mechanics between the deadlift and the front squat. I love pairing these two together just to help drive that home. We've got just over 5 seconds, and we'll start with our front squat. 3, 2, and 1. So we drive it down, drive through the heels, squeeze the legs together at the top. So in the squat, you're sitting back in a chair. The lumbar curve is neutral, chest and heart are elevated. Again, you should feel that slow, steady breath here. Heart rate slightly elevated, but not to an extreme. We're aiming for somewhere between 14 and 16 reps to get into our endurance zone. We're here for 3 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Now coming for the strict press. So as we prepare to take the weights overhead, I really want you to focus on lifting the hip points and the low ribs toward each other. So we create that integration. That means a slight curl of the tail under. With that, you might notice your upper back start to round. So keep that integration, lift up through the heart. Grab your weights, take them by your sides, and let's begin. Strict press. Overhead and back down, elbows to shoulder height. We keep the belly braced the whole time. So from the side, you'll see The curvature of the spine is neutral, not overarching the lower back. And that forces you to work through shoulder mobility. So you can't compensate for any gaps in your shoulder range by bending the lower back. Instead, we create that integration and we drive the effective movement. 3, 2, and 1. You can set the weights down if you need to, coming back into the dumbbell deadlift. So again, the deadlift is a hip hinge. So imagine crown to tail, moving as a unit forward. And in the dumbbell deadlift, there's a slight bend in the knees. So just enough to get the weights by your sides. And then you're driving through the heels to extend the hips up. Let's go in 2, 1. Here we go. Dumbbell deadlift and drive it up. Down and breathe. I like to create that forceful exhale through pursed lips. Let it make a sound so that you're really connecting to the breath with each phase of the movement. So exertion phase is that exhale. The exhale creates stability in the spine, stability in the lower back and the belly to support the movement pattern. And rest. Especially as we go through with this lighter weight range, there can be a tendency to sort of throw the weights around because they are lighter. So we really have to focus on form. I love the luteal phase for mastering movement mechanics, for really practicing these movement patterns with the lighter weight range, so that when you go to pick up heavy weights in the next few phases, 2, 1, you have those mechanics in your body. You have the blueprint of each movement pattern in your muscle memory so that you can recruit the muscle activation that you need to move a heavier load around. So we're in our front squat now. Knees are tracking over the toes. The key here is to keep your chest and heart elevated. Sometimes I like to gaze out along the horizon. I feel like the gaze informs body position. So where your gaze flows, you naturally start to arrange the body to support that rest. So as we gaze kind of out at a distance, you find your chest and heart elevate naturally, as opposed to gazing down, which kind of closes off the back of the heart. We've got about 10 more seconds, and then we're moving into our strict press. So again, create your stable body position, lift the hip points toward the low ribs. Let's begin. Take it overhead and down. Press it out and down. So I start to feel, you might hear it in my voice, my heart rate getting a little bit high. So I'm going to slow down the pace, especially with this upper body work. So still challenging, but working smaller muscle groups. So often what can happen is, even with light weight, even with no weight, when we're recruiting the lower body, these larger muscle groups, there can be a tendency to shift into that high intensity and rest. So it just takes that extra layer of awareness, of attention. You have to stay present throughout your workout so that you notice those subtle changes in your breathing pattern so that you can adapt and adjust accordingly. We'll go in about 10 seconds with the dumbbell deadlift. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So it's the deadlift, hip hinge, and drive the hip extension. Use your breath in and out. So here, the deadlift, especially if you're used to working this movement with heavier weight, you really have to focus on form and mechanics to avoid swinging the weights as you come up, especially when they're lighter. So really check in, tune in here to your form. Even with the lighter weights, your body will thank you. 2 and 1. Rest. I'm going to set the weights down in between, because these back-to-back leg exercises, that's where you start to feel the heart rate a little bit too elevated. So we take a break, big breath in, and a slow breath out. So again, sometimes just a few conscious breaths can bring Bring the breath back down. 2, 1. Let's begin front squat. Take it down and up. Squeeze the legs together at the top. So with the lighter weight, the lighter load, we have an opportunity to work those additional elements. So like that tiny squeeze of the inner thighs and the outer glutes at the top to give you the best, most effective movement so that every rep counts. We've got about 10 more seconds. Last 3, 2, and 1. You can set the weights down. We've got 25 seconds. This is our last exercise of this circuit before we have our transition. So we have a little bit longer rest in between circuits, and then we'll come into our final circuit of this workout. So strict press in about 10 seconds. Gather your breath. Bring the weights into position. 3, 2, and 1. Take it overhead and back down. You got this. Squeeze at the top. So imagine like you're trying to press those dumbbells together. Again, lift the hip points towards the low ribs. You got this. Up and down. Strict press is all shoulders, all upper body. We've got about 15 more seconds. So even with the lighter weight range, a strict press is really isolating the arms and shoulders. So you might start to feel it, especially with the higher volume. This is the endurance work. And rest. So we have our longer rest period here before we begin our third and final circuit. This circuit will be using split body position. So we'll come into our split squat, which is very much like a lunge, but it's a little bit tighter. So the stance is a little bit closer. We're moving straight down and into an upright row. Upright row, make sure that your shoulders are externally rotated so the weight comes slightly out in front of the body and back down. Upright row and back down. Then we're going to pause. And here we will drop one of the weights and we're doing a wood chop. So we're taking that weight from the side overhead, down and up. We'll switch sides after that. We'll come into our split squat with a hammer curl. Split squat and hammer curl. And then again, the wood chop to the other side. So there's 4 movements in this one, just because we are splitting into each side. We'll go into 1 with that split squat to upright row, down and up. Take it down and lift up. So that back knee just hovers above the mat and up. So this is a total body movement pattern. We've got upper body and lower body working together. And with that, we have more demand, more energy demand. So that might mean that you have to slow the pace, slow the rhythm to keep your breathing under control, to keep the intensity on the lower side. Come into your lunge here. You can drop one weight to the side, and we'll take the dumbbell, both sides from your back hip towards the front side. So we're keeping the hips and shoulders square. We're just using that rotation to tone the hip flexors and the obliques. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. From the side, drive it up. So it's a wood chop. It's an explosive pattern that we use the legs to stabilize. So feel sort of an activating energy to the center by squeezing the inner thighs. Even though you're in this split leg position, hug the inner thighs energetically to the midline. Down and drive it up. Keep the torso nice and long. So both sides of the waist lengthening evenly. We're not crunching to the side, but using that strength and rest. We'll switch sides now. So left leg forward, we're coming into a split squat with a hammer curl. So same thing. This is a total body movement pattern. Use this full rest period to deepen your inhales, deepen your exhales. We'll begin in 3, 2, and 1. Step it back, hammer curl. So we're in this static split squat, adding the curl. Keep your elbows glued to your sides so that you can isolate the biceps. Down, hover, and come up. Keep the shoulders directly over the hips. So not leaning forward or back. Crown to tail, moving up and down as a unit. Through the stability of the legs, through the power of that front glute. We're here. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Set one weight down to the side. Wood chop on this side. Get your weight into position. We've got that nice longer rest period, so 25 seconds to really collect your breath, especially with these total body movements. You'll find the energy demand goes up quickly. So you stay in control. Let your pace guide the movement. Here we go. Take it up. The wood chop. So it's that rotating element in the spine. It's one of the 7 primal movement patterns in the body. Rotation is such a gift of our anatomy, of our very mobile spine. And so we use these movement patterns to really keep the spine healthy, to keep the range of motion in all directions. So that's forward bending, backward bending, and rotation. Last 2, 1. You can set the weights down as we shift positions back to the split squat with the first side and our upright row. So take your weights. We've got about just over 10 seconds of rest left. So use it to take maybe one really long, deep breath. Then we'll begin in 3, 2, 1. So take that back knee to hover, upright row. Remember, the shoulders are externally rotated. That means the weight comes slightly out in front of the body and your elbows are not tipping straight up towards the ceiling, but instead coming out and up. That will load the shoulders more safely, more effectively as we come up. Last 10 seconds here. And then we're going to come down into our lunge and drop one of the weights. 2 and 1. Set that weight down. Prepare for the wood chop. So grab your weight. You can even relax the weights for a moment. Maybe just stretch it out. And again, use that 25-second rest period for deep inhales and exhales. That will really help your recovery, the pace of your recovery, especially in the luteal phase. Here we go. 2, 1. Drive it up. That powerful movement. Drive from the hip. Squeeze the legs energetically to the midline. That'll help stabilize. And this is total body. So if the arms are working alone, this movement is much harder. But you have that drive from the low belly, from the left hip flexor, to take the weight overhead. That rotational component, it's something that you might feel tomorrow, just adding a bit of load to rotation and rest. I know anytime I work with weights in that movement pattern, it's something that I feel the next day. And it helps cue your posture. So as you feel those muscles having been worked, it sort of reminds you to stand a little taller, to breathe a little deeper. Here we go. Coming into split lunge, split squat position. We take it down and curl it up. Extend the arms and curl. Isolate the biceps here. Down and up. So this is the end of our second round. We have just one more round to finish. We'll jump into an optional isometric finisher. And then a cool down. 2 and 1. Take that knee down. Grab your one weight and get ready for wood chops. I think I did the same leg twice. So you should have your left leg forward. Don't sweat it. I can do the left leg twice in the last round. So coming into wood chops in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. I knew it felt a little bit tough in that second set of split squats. So there's a way. We still have one more round to even things out. Drive that weight. Keep the lower body stable, but it drives the power. Here we go. Last 10 seconds on the clock. You got it. Strong quality reps from start to finish. And rest. In these higher volume workouts, it helps to focus just on the next quality rep. If you start to think 16 rep range, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming. So just really draw your attention to that next quality rep, and we build one on top of the other. So we'll go for our split squat to upright row in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Take it down, upright row, down and up. Breathe here in this last set. Make it your strongest. So notice, as you start to get tired, do you lose the integration in the belly? Can you reactivate with some strong exhales? Give them some sound. The exhales help slow the heart rate down. Your inhales actually speed it up. So we balance between the two. Come down and get ready for your wood chop. We'll go in about 12 more seconds here. So I will switch sides to the right side just to balance it out here. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Drive that weight. You got it. Take it up and back. Drive it up. We're here for just a few more seconds in this interval. Up and back down. Here we go. Find the rhythm of your breath. Don't let it drop out. We've got 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Rest. Switching sides now to the split squat with that hammer curl. We have our rest period here, and then we will pick it up for the last 2 exercises of this workout. So grab your weights, come into position for the split squat with the hammer curl, going in 3, 2, 1. Take it down and curl it up, down and up. Hover that back knee and squeeze the biceps as you come up. So the elbows are hugging in. We have that isolation work. Add the little extra squeeze at the top. Mind-muscle connection for the upper arm. Here we go. Last 10 seconds on the clock. Stay with it till the end. I know the volume is building. By the end of this last circuit, you should be feeling it. Upper and lower body rest. Come down, set one weight off to the side. We'll go in about just over 15 seconds here. We have our final exercise, and then you can either choose to jump right into your cool down or join me for a 5-minute isometric finisher. So we'll come into position for our wood chops here in 2, 1. Drive it up and back down. Take it up with power and back down and down. Here we go. This is the last set, last round. Make it count. You're almost there. Home stretch, 15 more seconds. Breathe in and out with that forceful exhale on the power phase, the exertion phase. 3, 2, and 1. Set your weights down. Slowly transition back up to standing. We have concluded the main portion of our workout, and now we will shift to the optional finisher if you're joining me there. Otherwise, you can use the timestamps provided in the description of this video to just jump right into cool down mode. So make your choice, and we'll head there now. We are going to begin our isometric finisher. So in this one, we're alternating between isometric exercises that we are holding for 1 minute each. So they are longer intervals, but we're in that isometric phase, which is very supportive for the luteal phase. It works on muscular endurance and without the high intensity. So we'll get started in about 10 seconds. Our first movement is the wall sit, or first isometric hold, I should say. So press your back up against the wall, hips are level with the knees. 2, 1. Our minute starts now. So press the shoulders onto the wall, curl the tail slightly under, drive through the heels, really press down, and then hug the thighs energetically to the midline. You should feel the entire chain of the legs fire up here. You can rest your hands on your thighs, and then here start to focus on the rhythm of your breath. So deep inhales and slow exhales. Keep the breath through the nose if you can. That helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, brings that calming effect online, so that rather than contributing to the stress, we're sort of helping to neutralize it. So exercise is certainly a positive stress, but in the luteal phase, we want to sort of balance it with the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. So we're doing that here in these isometric holds. We'll switch in about 3, 2, 1 to a plank. So come into your plank position. You can have the knees up or down. Once we're there, we'll start to refine it. So shoulders are over the wrists. Your heels are over the ball mounds of your feet. Start to hug the heels of your hands toward the ball mounds of your feet. Feel the belly fire up. As you do that, if you lost the extension in the upper back, start to stretch the heart and crown forward without collapsing the low back. Engage the legs. Imagine you were pressing your heels onto a wall, and then squeeze the thumbs energetically to the midline. You should start to feel all the way around the trunk really fire and awaken. You've got that micro bend in the elbows, so we're not locking out the elbows, but really recruiting the strength of the arms, the muscles in the arms to support your body here. Broaden the shoulders apart, stretch the crown forward. We've got just 5 more seconds, and then we're coming back into the wall sit. 3, 2, and 1. Quick transition right back to your wall sit. Sit it nice and low. Bring the back onto the wall. We're here for 1 more minute. Breathe. So you can do anything for 1 minute, especially when you check in, when you're allowing yourself to be in the sensation. So I know for me, when it starts to get tough, my mind wants to be distracted. It wants to go elsewhere. But how can you stay in the sensation? Really pay attention to where you feel it in your body. Do you feel it in your thighs or your glutes? How can you more evenly distribute that load? How can you work with your body to be here for 20 more seconds? You got this. Breathing here. You might even close your eyes to really internalize the experience. So it's bringing that added layer of presence to workouts that might otherwise feel a bit checked out. We're coming into boat pose next. So come off the wall, lower to a seat, and lift into boat pose. Squeeze the knees together. You can take the hands behind the thighs and lift the heart toward the chest. Once you get your body into that position, keep the elevation in the heart. You might release the hands. Squeeze the knees together. They're going to want to flare out to make this easier. Squeeze them together. Hug belly, chest to thighs. Here we go. We're here for 30 more seconds. A little bit longer. Here we go. Breathe. You might start to feel some trembling in the legs, in the low belly, the hip flexors. Lift up through the heart. Hug the knees to the chest. If you need to, you always have the option of hands behind the thighs or even fingertips to the ground. The key here is to keep your heart and chest elevated. We have just 1 more wall sit after this, and we are done. 4, 3, 2, 1. Transition nice and slow. Back up to your wall sit. and into position. So again, we're here just under a minute. Curl the tail under, press the shoulders into the wall. You want your hips level with the knees, or maybe slightly lower, maybe slightly above, depending on your level of comfort and how tired your legs are. So listening in here, not pushing through any barriers, but kind of flirting with your intuitive edge. So you kind of hit that point where you think, I really need to get out of this position. And then you breathe, you recollect your awareness, and you stay in it. For just 15 more seconds on the clock. You got this. In and out through the nose. I know your legs are talking to you. Last 3, 2, and 1. With intention, slowly come out. Shake out those legs. We are going to transition now to our cool down mode. So you should have your heart rate kind of back down to neutral, and we will move into that cool down now. Now that you have completed your endurance workout, you should still feel like you have some energy left in the tank. We're just going to cool it down briefly for about 5 minutes here. So take your feet nice and wide. We're simply going to move through lateral lunge with a reach. So reach for the opposite toes and reach. Find that kind of rhythmic movement. So we start with kind of that quicker pace just to meet the body where it is at the end of kind of an elevated heart rate zone. And then we'll slowly guide it back down. So as we get through this first cool down movement, start to slow the pace. And as long as your heart is sort of back to its neutral range, we can start to come up through center, lift up tall through the spine, and then reach the arms overhead. Big inhale. And slowly fold forward. As you come forward, keep your head level with the heart and hips, just to avoid any dizziness or abrupt changes in blood pressure. Shift the weight forward into the ball mounds of the feet. Left hand stays down. Twist open with the right. Keep the hips square here. And switch sides. Twist open with the left. Square the hips. Really stretch the shoulders. Excellent job. We're coming now to a lunge. So turn over your right leg. Reach the arms up. Side bend. Take your right hand to right hip. Left arm reaches up and over. Big breath in and a slow breath out. Come through center. Hands frame the foot. Draw the hips back to straighten the right leg any amount. Wiggle the toes. Hug the toes toward the shin. Draw that right heel toward the right hip crease. And slowly come out. Let's switch sides. So left foot comes forward, lunge, reach the arms up. Take your left hand to left hip, right arm up and over. Really root down through the back shin here, big breath. And slowly come out, hands frame the foot. Start to straighten that left leg any amount, wiggle the hips, press down through the left heel and drag it energetically back. Big breath in and a slow breath out. Take that left knee to meet the right, come into a kneeling position. Supported camel pose here, so not an extreme back bend, just a little bit of a stretch for the front body. So hands come to the sacrum, squeeze the elbows together, and just lean slightly into those hands. Lift up and out through the chest and heart. Press the thighs forward, let the glutes fill your hands. And then slowly coming out. We're going to come into thread the needle. So tabletop position here. Take your left arm nice and high. Thread it under the right. Bring your left ear to the mat. Spider your right fingertips to twist the heart open, keeping the hips square as best as possible. And then slowly return to center, right side now. Inhale, right arm open skyward and threads under. Bring your right ear to the mat. Spider those left fingertips to rotate open. Last big breath here. And slowly come up through center, cat and cow pose. So shoulders are over the wrists, soften the belly, gaze up, shine your sitting bones back, breathe in. As you exhale from the tail, curl under, round the spine, press into the hands, chin to chest. Inhale, reverse the direction, lengthen the spine, stretch in both directions. And exhale, round it in, curl, chin to chest. Last big breath here, inhale. And exhale, empty completely. Take your hands nice and long out in front of you, puppy pose, one of my favorite stretches of all time. Really reach your arms forward, stretch your hips up and back. Feel that opening in the armpits, the underside of the shoulder. And then slowly, mindfully start to come up to your tabletop position. Sway the hips side to side. And then one by one, step your feet to your hands, transferring the weight nice and slowly. And then bone by bone, we roll all the way up to standing here. Reach your arms overhead. Let's take a huge breath in. And a slow breath out with a sigh. That is your very quick cool down, just kind of the bare minimum to transition from our endurance workout to the rest of your day. I encourage you, if you have more time, to stretch it out or maybe engage in some deep belly breathing, anything that you need to kind of come down from the workout so that you're transitioning more smoothly into whatever comes next in your day. So thank you for being here for this workout, for joining me, and for letting your body be moved.